Bismarck said of Bohemia that it was the key to the control of Europe. But Prague is far from London, and Bismarck's words meant nothing to the British foreign secretaries, who felt able to say that wars in such outlandish places were of no concern for the British Empire. The land of Czechoslovakia was a faraway country in which the British never had any interest. Music lovers may have heard of Smetana, Dvorak, and Janacek, historians of Jan Hus, King Charles, the Battle of the White Mountain, and the Tale of the Winter Queen. Some Englishmen, like H.G. Wells, had even heard of Karel Čapek and his idea of the modern robot. But for some Britons, Bohemia was just a place in a Christmas song about King Wenceslas. It was a word, like honor is a word. At the Versailles Peace Conference in 1918-1919, Tomáš Masaryk secured the word of the victorious Allied powers to realize his dream of creating an independent Czechoslovakia. In his inaugural presidential speech, he said, "Our whole history inclines us towards the democratic powers. Our Renaissance is a logical link between us and the democracies of the West." 10 years on, the Czechs celebrated his achievement, not knowing that they had only 10 more years in which to enjoy it. Masaryk's nation was composed of many different races, but his dream was that they should live in the freedom of democracy. Created by visions and words, living by the freedom to speak and think aloud, Czechoslovakia was protected by alliances, words on paper. Beneš, who succeeded Masaryk in 1935, pledged his word to defend the young nation. But within 2 years of the death of its founder, the nation which had lived by words died by them. Beneš, like Masaryk, used a spider's web of alliances to cocoon Czechoslovakia from potential enemies. Chief amongst these allies was France, whose military assistance was pledged. The French, like Bismarck, thought that to be the master of Hradčany Castle in Prague was the key to Central Europe. But the British documents at the Public Record Office at Kew, though they contain many words, include no treaty guaranteeing Czechoslovakia. Although there was no treaty or any obligation on the part of Britain, Chamberlain had decided to interfere in the affairs of the sovereign state of Czechoslovakia, a country he knew nothing about. In the Prime Minister's file, Prem 1/266A, documents on the Munich Conference of 1938 can be found. And in the Foreign Office file FO 371/21745, the minutes of what one clerk said to another lie beside memoranda which broke up a nation. Why so many British words on such a faraway country?
I was Mr. Chamberlain's parliamentary private secretary, which is really the lowest form of political life, and therefore had no real function. He invited me to go with him to Munich because he thought that on the return I could explain matters to the members of the House Commons, because the parliamentary private secretary is a sort of liaison between the Prime Minister and the members of Parliament. So actually I had no function there, or official position there, and I sat outside in the adjoining room during the time of the discussion of the agreement with General Keitel and a number of others, and Goering came in, and we talked generally while the agreement was being reached. When it was signed, I actually went into the room to watch the signature. So, Chamberlain had some reasons, very strong reasons, for trying to get a genuine peace if it could be negotiated. Now, the center of the argument, of course, was about Czechoslovakia, about the Sudetenland, and the self-determination for the Sudetenland, and that was part of the Munich agreement.
V Československu totiž nešlo vůbec tehdy o otázku výhradně národnostní, protože každý z nás, ať z Němců nebo z Čechů, měl nějakého německého nebo českého předka. Tady šlo o zásadní otázku, která tehdy tvořila hráz a přehradu v celé Evropě, to je otázku demokracie a fašismu.
The thing that's so maddening is to look back at the quality of the democracy that Czechoslovakia represented at the time of the Munich Agreement. Here was a country that had really been a home and a refuge for refugees from Austria, from other parts of Europe who were escaping the Nazis, coming to Czechoslovakia precisely because they knew the kind of democracy that was there, that they could exercise their freedoms. And yet, once they got there, instead of the United States and Great Britain supporting this one democracy that they really should have supported above all other countries in Central Europe at that time, they had to escape yet once again as the Nazis rolled over them.
Bismarck said that blood and iron were stronger than words. The words of Hitler in his Bible, Mein Kampf, were to much the same effect. Yet it was through the power of the spoken word that Hitler encompassed the means to employ blood and iron until he was truly the godfather of Europe. As such, he could export the salient features of his regime, persecuting Jews, burning books, and preparing for war. It was little wonder that the small democratic republic of Czechoslovakia should have felt nervous of such a neighbor.
Diese Erscheinung aus dem deutschen Leben des Reiches sein würde. Hitler! Hitler aber ist Deutschland, wie Deutschland Hitler ist! Hitler! Sieg! Sieg!
Racial purity demanded that all Germans join the Reich. If there was something rotten in the state of Czechoslovakia, it was to be found in the northwestern border regions, the so-called Sudetenland. There, a gymnastics instructor, Konrad Henlein, performed the exercises set out for him by the Godfather and demanded autonomy for Germans within Czechoslovakia. The Sudeten Germans had never belonged to Germany, but Chamberlain, being ignorant of this fact, continually referred to the Sudeteners as being returned to Germany. This attitude of the Prime Minister played into the hands of both Hitler and Henlein. Within months, they increased their demands and started to scream for the cessation of Sudetenland to the Nazi Reich, the separation which Chamberlain favored.
The question of the German minority in Czechoslovakia on what to do about it, about German complaints, how to resolve that, that naturally was strictly an internal affair of Czechoslovakia. Unfortunately, it became, of course, a problem when Hitler raised the issue. Then it became sort of an international question.